Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to do my book haul for the month of July. I can't believe we're already at the end of July. What is time? It's really weird and bizarre, but I have 8 books that I brought into my library this month. I'm really excited about all of them. Can't wait to talk to you about them. Before we begin, though, I do want to mention the shirt I'm wearing. So if you remember, I think it was I don't remember if it was my May or June book haul, but whichever one aligned with Bozeman Pride in Montana, we had gone to a drag story hour in Bozeman for a bookstore called the Country Bookshelf. I had gotten a t-shirt from them, but I got the wrong size by accident. I finally got the right size. So here it is, Country Bookshelf. Just wanted to point that out because, again, it's a really cool bookstore. If you're ever in Bozeman, Montana, please visit them because it's a really great independent bookstore. I think it might be the biggest independent bookstore in the state of Montana, but I could be wrong about that. My book hauls in 2023 have been pretty large because if you follow along, you know, we expanded my library in January and that had a big impact on me and purchasing books. I kind of went on a spree buying a lot of books because it was filling in a lot of space. And I've also become a bit more of a collector, which is an interesting pivot that I've made. Last month, finally, I had a smaller book haul. This is bigger than that, but it's smaller than the others. So hopefully I'm moving in the right direction again. But again, all of these books are really exciting. So let's jump in and begin talking about them, because this is what we're here for. The first one, actually the first 2 were on my list of most anticipated books coming in the second half of 2023. I will have that video in the description box down below if you'd like the full list. But I actually requested review copies of these 2 books, which is not something I usually do. But I did it, and I was actually approved for both of them. The first one is Dearborn by Ghassan Zeineddine. I have actually started this one. I have only read the first story, though, and the first story was very compelling, so I really can't wait to get further into this book. This is published by Tin House, which I had been particularly looking at because they published Morgentalti's Night of the Living Res, which was one of my favorite books that I read last year. So I wanted to see what they would be doing in 2023, and this really jumped out to me. Here is the description of this book online. I'm sorry, Jamie is scratching to make herself comfortable in her bed behind me. So if you hear scratching, that's what's going on. She's just getting comfortable. But here's the blurb for this book. Spanning several decades, Ghassan Zeineddin's debut collection examines the diverse range and complexities of the Arab-American community in Dearborn, Michigan. In 10 tragicomic stories, Zeineddine explores themes of identity, generational conflicts, war trauma, migration, sexuality, queerness, home and belonging, and more. I mean, I don't need to go any further for you to know why I was interested in this book, but there's more. In Dearborn, a father teaches his son how to cheat the IRS and hide their cash earnings inside of frozen chickens. Tensions heighten within a close-knit group of couples when a mysterious man begins to frequent the local gym pool dressed in Speedos printed with nostalgic images of Lebanon. And a failed stage actor attempts to drive a young Lebanese man with ambitions of becoming a Hollywood action hero to LA, but immigration and customs enforcement agents have other plans. By turns wildly funny, incisive, and deeply moving, Dearborn introduces readers to an arresting new voice in contemporary fiction and invites us all to consider what it means to be a part of a place and community and how it is that we help one another survive. Really excited to get further into this book. It is publishing, I think, on September 5th, but let me double check. Yes, September 5th, 2023. So there is still time to pre-order this book at your local independent bookstore. You could do Country Bookshelf, your local one. Montana Book Company is my favorite. Or you could just go to bookshop.org. I love them as an online alternative to that big behemoth. They support independent bookstores. So I would encourage you to check this one out because I'm only 1 story in, but I'm really loving it so far. In my book hauls, I like to read a little bit from the opening of the book. And since this is a story collection, I'll read the opening of the first story, which again is the only one that I have read. It is called The Actors of Dearborn. Before arriving at Uncle Sam's house on the corner of Gould and Coleman Streets, Yusuf Bazzi had been canvassing the neighborhoods in East Dearborn, Michigan for over a month, knocking on doors throughout the day and late into the night despite the heat or rain. His new job as census taker afforded him flexible hours, and at this point in his life, he preferred to be outdoors. He was 31, and although tall and slim, he had grown a small belly since he had started canvassing in early August. He blamed his extra weight on the neighborhoods. That is the first story in Dearborn by Ghassan Zeineddine, again, publishing September 5th of this year. I'm only one story in, but I would really encourage you to check it out. Maybe even just see if your library will be getting a copy. Hopefully we're close enough that they will know if they are. The second book is also from that most anticipated video, and it's Good Women, Stories by Halle Hill. I have read this one. I talk about it in fairly deep detail in my most recent Friday Reads video. I'll have that linked down below so you can refer to it if you want more about this book. What really made this jump out to me was that Disha Filia gave it a blurb, and if you know me, you know that The Secret Lives of Church Ladies is sort of, I refer to it as my beloved. It's fantastic. So that really caught my attention. It's from Hub City Press, which I've also been sort of keeping an eye on because they published The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles, which I read a couple of years ago and really liked. So they do interesting things. They're a smaller publisher, and I just kind of wanted to keep an eye on them. This is published on September 12th, 2023. So again, still time to pre-order this if you would like. Now, I have read this book, so I could just talk about it, but I'm going to read the blurb online just to make sure I get everything right. A woman boards a Greyhound bus barreling toward Florida to meet her sugar daddy's mother. A state fair employee considers revenge on a local preacher. A sister struggles with guilt as she helps her brother plan to run away with a man he's seeing in secret. A young woman who works for a scam for-profit college navigates the lies she sells for a living. Darkly funny and deeply human, Good Women observes how place, blood ties, generational trauma, obsession, and boundaries or lack thereof influence how we navigate our small worlds and how those worlds so often collide in ways we don't expect. Through intimate moments of personal choice, Hill carefully shines a light on how these 12 women shape and form themselves through faith and abandon, transgression and conformity, community, caution, and solitude. With precision and empathy, Hill captures the mundane in moments of absurdity and bears witness to both joy and heartbreak, reminding us how the next moment could be life-changing. Vibrant and exacting, Hill is a must-read new voice in literary fiction. What I will say in addition to that is that I was reminded of Luster by Raven Leilani and Real Life by Brandon Taylor. If you have read other books by Brandon Taylor and like them, this would probably be, but Real Life is the only one I have read. So those are the only ones I can speak to. If you've read those books and liked them, this would be a pretty solid option for you. It is short stories, and I know that can be a tough sell for people, but I enjoyed it, and I would still recommend it to you. The opening story is called Seeking Arrangements, and here is how it opens. We take the Greyhound down there, and Ron buys us the whole row, 3 people deep, so we can spread out. When we board the bus, I'm nervous to hand my ticket to the driver. I worry she somehow knows. I worry she judges me for letting this white man pay my bills, but she doesn't even notice us. Her badge reads, "Hello, my name is Lakeisha," and she stamps our tickets with her eyes forward and her earbuds in, popping a wad of gum. That's the opening of Good Women, Stories by Halle Hill. This will be published on September 12th. So again, there's time to pre-order or check your local library to see if they will be getting a copy of it. The next one was inspired by a video I did back in June about BBC Culture's top books of 2023 so far. One of the books that was on that list, by the way, that video will also be in the description box down below. One of those books was by Sebastian Barry. And I mentioned that I had never read one of his books. A lot of people commented on that video to tell me about Days Without End and how much they liked it, or loved it, and thought that I would like it. And of course, it immediately sounded interesting and appealing to me. So the next time I was in my local used bookstore, I meandered by the B section, looked under Sebastian Barry, and here was a copy of Days Without End. So here it is. This is published by Penguin. It was originally published somewhere around 2017. That's what it says online. I could just look at the copyright date, actually, and not be lazy, but oh well. Well, it was first published in Great Britain in 2016. It looks like 2017 is probably when it made it over to the States. Here's the description. From the two-time Booker Prize finalist Sebastian Barry, a master storyteller from Wall Street Journal, and author of Old God's Time, a powerful chronicle of duty and family set against the American Indian and Civil Wars. Thomas McNulty, aged barely 17 and having fled the Great Famine in Ireland, signs up for the U.S. Army in the 1850s. With his brother-in-arms, John Cole, Thomas goes on to fight in the Indian Wars against the Sioux and the Yurok, and ultimately the Civil War. Orphans of terrible hardships themselves, the men find these days to be vivid and alive, despite the horrors they see and are complicit in. Moving from the plains of Wyoming to Tennessee, Sebastian Barry's latest work is a masterpiece of atmosphere and language, an intensely poignant story of two men and the makeshift family they create with a young Sioux girl, Winona. Days Without End is a fresh and haunting portrait of the most fateful years in American history and is a novel never to be forgotten. This got so many endorsements on that video, I can't even tell you. So I'm really excited to get to it at some point. Here is how it opens. Chapter 1. The method of laying out a corpse in Missouri sure took the proverbial cake, like decking out our poor lost troopers for marriage rather than death. All their uniforms brushed down with lamp oil into a state never seen when they were alive. Their faces clean-shaved, as if the embalmer sure didn't like no whiskers showing. No one that knew him could have recognized Trooper Watchorn, because those famous Dundrearies were gone. Anyway, death likes to make a stranger of your face. True enough, their boxes weren't but cheap wood, but that was not the point. You lift one of those boxes, and the body makes a big sag in it. Wood cut so thin at the mill, it was more a wafer than a plank. But dead boys don't mind things like that. The point was, we were glad to see them so well turned out, considering. That is a very intriguing opening to Days Without End by Sebastian Barry. Another book I'm really excited to get to. I'm excited to get to all of these books. You can take that for sure. But there are some in here that I have already read. For instance, Only This Beautiful Moment by Abdi Nazemian. I actually listened to this on audio, I think at the beginning of July, and I loved it enough that I contacted Montana Book Company to get a copy. They ordered it for me and sent it here, and here it is. This is published by Balzer and Bray, an imprint of HarperCollins, and it's a 2023 release. I loved Like a Love Story, and have been wanting to read another Abdi Nazemian book ever since. I had been thinking that I would read The Chandler Legacies, which was an earlier book of his. However, when I heard that this one was coming out, I pivoted and read this, and then I just had to own a copy, and here it is. Joel read this after I did and also really loved it. It's a great book. It is a great book. Here's what they say online. Again, I could speak about this book because I read it, but I'm going to be thorough and do it right and read the description that's online. From the Stonewall honor-winning author of Like a Love Story comes a sweeping story of 3 generations of boys in the same Iranian family. Perfect for fans of Last Night at the Telegraph Club and Darius the Great is Not Okay. 2019. Mood is an out gay teen living in Los Angeles with his distant father, Saeed. When Mood gets the news that his grandfather in Iran is dying, he accompanies his dad to Tehran, where the revelation of family secrets will force Mood into a new understanding of his history, his culture, and himself. 1978. Saeed is an engineering student with a promising future ahead of him in Tehran. But when his parents discover his involvement in the country's burgeoning revolution, they send him to safety in America, a country Saeed despises. And even worse, he's forced to live with the American grandmother he never knew existed. 1939. Bobby, the son of a calculating Hollywood stage mother, lands a coveted MGM studio contract, but the fairy tale world of glamour he's thrust into has a dark side. Set against the backdrop of Tehran and Los Angeles, this tale of intergenerational trauma and love is an ode to the fragile bonds of family, the hidden secrets of history, and all the beautiful moments that make us who we are today. This is a stunning book. And the relationship between these 3 generations of men is beautiful. The way it plays out, the way they are disconnected in the beginning and find connection over time. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I cannot recommend it to you enough. And if cost is a concern, because this is technically a young adult book, I believe it only costs like $19.99. There's not a price on the inside cover, but yeah, pretty affordable. I don't know if that helps, but it's there. Here is the opening of the book. 2019, Mood, Los Angeles to Tehran. Being gay on the internet is exhausting. That's what goes through my head as I de-gay my social media. Gone are all my opinions about Drag Race and whether straight actors should be allowed to play gay roles. Gone is every picture I've ever posted of me and Shane kissing or holding hands or, ironically, painting rainbow flags on our chests. Ironic because we're not the kind of gays who post thirst traps, not because we don't respect our flag. When I'm done deleting everything, all that's left is a void. It's like I have no past, just possibility. That is the opening of Only This Beautiful Moment by Abdi Nazemian, a really, really great book. This is destined to be one of my favorite reads of 2023. It is that good, and I think you would probably enjoy it as well. Next, something I have been sort of casing for a while. This is an author who is in the Pulitzer Prize family of authors. It's Anne Tyler and Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. They have had copies of this at my local used bookstore, but the quality has been a little off, or they're trade paperbacks that are almost the price of a new trade paperback. So I was kind of waiting, and then this mass market edition of it showed up, which is in pretty good condition and would be very easy to read, and it was only $2. So I snapped it up. I've heard a lot of really great things about Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. This sort of launched the path that Anne Tyler was set on in the 1980s that culminated in her winning a Pulitzer Prize for fiction for Breathing Lessons, which I have read and need to reread. Heard a lot of really great things about this book. Here is what it says online. Pearl Tull is nearing the end of her life, but not her memory. Ever since 1944, when her husband left her, she has raised her 3 very different children on her own. Now grown, they have gathered together, with anger, with hope, and with a beautiful, harsh, and dazzling story to tell. That's all it says. But I've heard so many good things about this book over the year. This was even assigned reading for a local high school when I was working at Borders in New Jersey back in the day. And I'm really looking forward to reading it. Chapter 1 is called Something You Should Know. And by the way, this edition of this book is published by Berkeley. So chapter 1, again, is called Something You Should Know. While Pearl Tull was dying, a funny thought occurred to her. It twitched her lips and rustled her breath, and she felt her son lean forward from where he kept watch by her bed. Get, she told him. You should have got... And I'll leave the rest. That's a pretty good tease. So that's the opening of Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant by Anne Tyler, an author I need to read more of, because so far the only book of hers that I have read was Breathing Lessons, which is the one that won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and which I need to reread because I didn't like it, but I wonder if I would think differently about it now. I'm not convinced I will, but I've heard a lot of really good things about Anne Tyler in general. The next one is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. Now, I used to own a copy of this book, and it disappeared. Why, it doesn't matter. Where it went, doesn't matter. I talked about this in a video where I talked about her new book, Let Us Descend, but I'm pretty sure when I moved from New York to Montana, I gave my copy to a friend. I think that's what happened. In recent years, I've been thinking, and with the looming publication of Let Us Descend, I was thinking, you know, I want to have copies of her books. So I started looking at my local used bookstore, and they just never had any of her books. Joel was traveling for work and stopped in a bookstore that had used books and found this copy of Salvage the Bones for me. So bless Joel. This is published by Bloomsbury. Here is the description online. Again, I have read this, but I'm going to do the description online just to make sure I get everything right. A hurricane is building over the Gulf of Mexico, threatening the coastal town of Salvage, Mississippi, and Esh's father is growing concerned. A hard drinker, largely absent, he does not show concern for much else. Esh and her 3 brothers are stocking food, but there isn't much to save. Lately, Esh can't keep down what food she gets. She's 14 and pregnant. Her brother Skeeta is sneaking scraps for his prized pit bull's new litter, dying one by one in the dirt. Meanwhile, brothers Randall and Junior try to stake their claim in a family long on child's play and short on parenting. As the 12 days that make up the novel's framework yield to their dramatic conclusion, this unforgettable family, motherless children sacrificing for one another as they can, protecting and nurturing where love is scarce, pulls itself up to face another day. A big-hearted novel about familial love and community against all odds, and a wrenching look at the lonesome, brutal, and restrictive realities of rural poverty, Salvage the Bones is muscled with poetry, revelatory, and real. It's a tremendous book. It won the National Book Award for Fiction, and Jesmyn Ward then went on to win another National Book Award for Fiction for her next book, Sing Unburied Sing, which I will hopefully be finding a copy of soon. This is a difficult book, and in case you couldn't tell, that hurricane is Katrina. It's set during the build-up to Hurricane Katrina. And it's a really fascinating, powerful, powerful book. Here is the opening. The first day, birth in a bare bulb place. China's turned on herself. If I didn't know, I would think she was trying to eat her paws. I would think that she was crazy, which she is, in a way. Won't let nobody touch her but Skeet. When she was a big-headed pit bull puppy, she stole all the shoes in the house, all our black tennis shoes Mama bought because they hide dirt and hold up until they're beaten soft. Only Mama's forgotten sandals, thin-heeled and tinted pink with so much red mud seeped in them, looked different. China hid them all under furniture, behind the toilet, stacked them in piles, and slept on them. When the dog was old enough to run and trip down the steps on her own, she took the shoes outside, put them in shallow ditches under the house. She'd stand rigid as a pine when we tried to take them away from her. Now China is giving like she once took away, bestowing where she once stole. She is birthing puppies. That is the opening of Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward, a book I'm really glad to have back in my library. And actually, it's interesting how many of these books I have read or am reading already. We'll do a count on that when we get to the end. Now, if you follow along, you know that I read a book by Edna Ferber earlier this year and have sort of been obsessed with her. I read Fanny herself, loved it. So I've been collecting Edna Ferber's books so I can sort of read them one by one. She is another person who is in the Pulitzer family of authors. The book that I found this month was Cimarron by Edna Ferber. This is an old hardcover edition of it, so this is not a copy that I'm really going to be able to read. I'll probably have to get one from the library when that comes around. But I've heard a lot of really great things about this book, and I love the one book of Edna Ferber's that I've read so far, so I'm looking forward to this. This was the basis for the Academy Award-winning major motion picture starring Best Actor nominee Richard Dix and Best Actress nominee Irene Dunne. I can't remember if it won Best Picture. I want to say that it did, but it's an early Hollywood motion picture. Here's the description. This vivid and sweeping tale of the Oklahoma land rush from Pulitzer Prize winner Edna Ferber traces the stunning challenges of settling an untamed frontier. Staking claim to their new home in Osage, Yancey Cravett, a spellbinding criminal lawyer, and his wife, well-bred Sabra, work against seemingly overwhelming odds to create a prosperous life for themselves. And as they establish themselves in this lawless land, Sabra displays a brilliant business sense and makes a success of their local newspaper, the Oklahoma Wigwam, all amidst border and land disputes, outlaws, and the discovery of oil. Originally published in 1929 and twice made into a motion picture, Cimarron brings history alive, capturing the settling of the American West in vivid detail. And there you have it. This, again, is a really old edition of this book. It's published by Doubleday, dedicated to Edna Ferber's mother, Julia. And here is how it opens. Chapter 1. All the Venables sat at Sunday dinner. All those handsome, inbred, Venable faces were turned enthralled toward Yancey Cravat, who was talking. The combined effect was almost blinding, as of incandescence, but Yancey Cravat was not bedazzled. A sun surrounded by lesser planets, he gave out a radiance so powerful as to dim the luminous circle about him. That is the opening of Cimarron by Edna Ferber. The final book in this book haul is another person from the Pulitzer family of authors and another author that I've been sort of collecting her books. I again, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that since we expanded my library, I've been thinking a lot more as a sort of collector. And I've been thinking about library builders, like Cimarron, definitely a library builder. Salvage the Bones, a book that I have already read, but decided I wanted a copy of in my library. And now, Piomeers by Willa Cather. The first novel in Willa Cather's trilogy set in the Great Plains region, Piomeers tells the story of Alexandra Bergson, the daughter of Swedish immigrants who is given her family's farm after the death of her father. She sets out to make the land pay, even when everyone else is moving on, and succeeds brilliantly, while coming to realize her love for a close family friend. Filled with triumph, tragedy, and sweeping depictions of frontier life around the turn of the century, Pioneers is a microcosm of that long-lost but far from forgotten time and place. This edition is published by Mariner. The only book of Willa Cather's I have read so far is My Antonia, and I actually really liked My Antonia. The book of hers that won a Pulitzer was one of ours, one of her later books, one of her lesser-known books. I'd say her more known books are My Antonia, O Piomeers, and Death Comes for the Archbishop. And I have copies of Death Comes for the Archbishop, but I haven't read that one yet. The only one I've read is My Antonia, which I really liked. And I'm looking forward to getting to her Pulitzer book as part of my Pulitzer project and reading more of her work. Here is how O Pioneers begins. Part 1, The Wild Land. Chapter 1. One January day, 30 years ago, the little town of Hanover, anchored on a windy Nebraska tableland, was trying not to be blown away. A mist of fine snowflakes was curling and eddying about the cluster of low drab buildings huddled on the gray prairie under a gray sky. The dwelling houses were set about haphazard on the tough prairie sod. Some of them looked as if they had been moved in overnight, and others as if they were straying off by themselves, headed straight for the open plain. None of them had any appearance of permanence, and the howling wind blew under them as well as over them. We'll stop there. That's the opening of O Pioneers by Willa Cather. So again, I think this is 8 books. And I'm just curious how many of these I have read so far. I've read Salvage the Bones, Only This Beautiful Moment, Good Women, and I'm working on Dearborn. So 3.5 out of these 8 books I've already read. So I have a really good head start on next year's book haul revisit for the month of July. I am going to take that. Any success I can get on a book haul revisit is good. But again, part of that is because I'm really into collecting specific books and authors, and as part of that, Salvage the Bones is something I've already read, but I just really want to have a copy in my library. If you have thoughts or opinions about any of these books or recommendations based on my interest in these books and authors, I would love to hear them in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.